Penny, and thank you, Candice. So now we are going to start off with our first speaker for today. We are delighted to welcome Suzy Redding. Now, Suzy is a chartered, I'm just going to read this so I get it right, chartered psychologist, accredited yoga teacher, personal trainer and author, and she's going to chat to you today about workplace wellness. So please enjoy and welcome to Suzy.
All right.
Welcome to our Wellbeing session. And my goodness, after the last 2 years we've tried to really need it today, right? A little bit about my background. So as Leslie just said, I'm a chartered psychologist. I'm a registered yoga teacher. I also spent a decade working as a personal trainer. All of those modalities draw themselves together to empower people with the skills of self-care. But if I'm honest with you, qualifications aside, it was when I became a mum, at the same time as losing my dad, that really makes this topic of personal resonance. And if anyone's thinking, oh goodness, I really hope she's not going to tell me I need to get up an hour earlier to meditate, relax. I'm not going to say that. However, if you want to do that, please go for it. The toolkit that I've spent the last 12 years developing is one that we can weave with relatively little effort, little time, little expense into everyday life. And so what we're going to explore together today is a practical toolkit that will help us navigate stress, loss and change. So a deep relevance for where we find ourselves right now. And we are going to get practical. So there will be some nourishment for you today. But before we dive into a little bit of myth busting about self-care, about those definitions, a bit of myth busting on resilience as well, because I think quite often that can keep us stuck. I actually want to share with you some personal observations from lockdown. And that is, I think the pandemic showed the general public, and I'm standing up here with my general public hat on right now, saying the pandemic showed us how much we need all of you. It showed us how much we really value you and the incredible work that you do. And I think you will have heard that a lot of people struggled enormously without access to the work that you do, the energy that you bring. And I'm really sorry that we don't say it enough. I'm sorry that we don't tell you how much we appreciate all of the effort, the energy that you bring, your expertise, your warmth, your care, the comfort and the nurturing that you bring, the kind ear, the safe place that you provide, the tenderness, the compassion, the nourishment that you give, people can't give to themselves. You make such a difference. And I hope that we can start today really anchored in a feeling of being appreciated. And I think it's really also important to acknowledge that all of those things that you do, all of those things that you bring, require enormous energy. Yeah? So you need to become really skilled in topping up your energy bank so that you can keep giving and keep going. Okay? As a profession, you were also so deeply affected by the pandemic, and I can only begin to imagine how tough that was, but also how challenging that continues to be. So, a huge dose of gentleness, tenderness, and self-compassion is required. And if you pause for a moment and take a look at what you've weathered in the last 2 years, all of the curveballs, the restrictions, the uncertainty, it's been monumental. And what I want to share with you is probably the most healing words that I've ever heard as a human being, and they are, of course you feel as you do. Yeah? Of course you feel as you do. If you're feeling really frazzled right now, of course you feel as you do. If you're feeling perhaps a little bit rusty, of course you feel as you do. Okay? So, beginning today's session just with a sense of deep self-compassion. Yeah? And let's engage in a little bit of nourishment. So before we do our myth busting, let's actually do some self-care. I'm hoping we can free up our hands. So for a moment, thankfully this is all going to be recorded. So the little gems that I'm going to share with you right now, if you want to take notes, you can do that via the recording later, but I just want you to experience some self-care before we talk about it. So I invite you, just physically drop your day on your shoulders. Yeah? Release your journey. Release the conversations that you may have had about who's going to do what for lunch at home. Let all of that drop from your shoulders. And what you might notice is that we can release a degree of tension, but actually it's quite hard to let go. And don't worry if you find it hard to let go, that's very normal. But what I'm going to show you is the gateway to relaxation. Sometimes that's a little bit of gentle exertion. Okay, don't worry, this is not huff and puff stuff. Just a little bit of gentle exertion. So can we start with just a little bit of lubrication for the joints. Make it flamenco style, big. Yeah, that's more effective. Okay, and then the other way around. So what we're doing is just oiling the joints, releasing tension. Yeah. Rusty. Okay, and then a little shake out. Now, as you do that, this is not just meaningless movement. As you do this, I want you to imagine that you are flicking away what you no longer need. You're releasing what no longer serves you. Now, what someone said to you last week, the to-do list, just let it leave the building. Okay. Now, this is where a gentle exertion kicks in. Now, already, hopefully, we're sort of feeling a little bit, there's a little bit of resurgence of energy. Yeah? Try this for me now. Can we just do a little clasp of the hands? If anyone's feeling cold, this will help. And then switch which hands you have on top. Now do that quickly, so you don't have to do it slowly. But what you're doing here, can you feel, yes, you're working your hands, but you're also working your forearms, your biceps, up into your chest muscles. Yeah? Okay? Now let's switch that up. Can we do an interlace? So you've got one thumb on top, squeeze. Now this will scramble your brains, don't worry. Now switch that interlace and squeeze with the other thumb on top. And then see if you can do that with pace. Easier said than done. Now the reason why I like this one, this is intense. There are no marks. The reason why I like this one is that it's sufficiently engaging that you literally can't think about anything else at the same time. Right? Okay, and then let that go. Just cup your hands in your lap. Can we feel that buzz of energy that we've just created? Do we also feel like we've got greater access to the ability to relax? Yeah? We're not quite done yet. So, can we now shrug shoulders up to ears? Take a deep breath in as you exhale. With a sigh, let your shoulders drop. A couple more times because it feels good. Beautiful. Once more. Okay. Do we feel a little lighter and brighter? Yeah? Awesome. Simply done. You know, these things literally take 30 seconds. Yeah? That's all it is. But that gateway to relaxation is really important. Half the challenge is actually noticing that there's tension there. The other half is then knowing how to release it. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to do today. Practical things that you can weave into your day. Okay, so we know that self-care doesn't need to be time-consuming. We know it doesn't have to take a lot of energy. Let's build this toolkit. But first, I think we need to do a little bit of myth-busting about what self-care is, because it's poorly understood. Yeah, if you listen to the media, you're going to hear it's a fad, it's a buzzword, it's Wellbeing gone mad. But when you take a look at its origin, originally we talked about it in the context of workers in high-risk roles. So we're talking police crash investigation unit, surgeons, counsellors. But I think what the last 2 years has showed us is that no one is immune from stress, loss and change, and we all need access to a broad toolkit to help us cope. And really that's what self-care is all about. It helps us cope in the moment because life is inherently stressful, whether it's beeping WhatsApp notifications or a washing machine that doesn't stop beeping until you turn it off, or maybe it's a full cleaning list, maybe it's a promotion, Maybe it's study. Maybe it's embarking on having a family or moving out. So it's not just things that we want to avoid that involve an energetic tax. It's also things that we aspire to and actually work really hard for that can deplete us. So we need a self-care toolkit to help us keep putting one foot in front of the other. But we also need it retrospectively to help us heal and restore from challenging life experiences or difficult clients or just big emotions. So self-care has a function in that it sort of puts us back together. And then it also has a protective function against the next curveball, right? So there's a resilience piece with self-care where if we top ourselves up, that's when we're best placed to cope with whatever it is that occurs in our day tomorrow. But it's more than that. It also gives us access to a version of ourselves that we can take pride in. Yeah? If you think about any goal that you have or any quality that you aspire to model, you're more likely to achieve that, be that, when you're well nourished. So I hope that if we can see self-care through that lens, it starts to dial down this sense of guilt that so many of us feel about taking care of ourselves. And really, in our profession, and for any human being, let's be honest, our health is our number one commodity, right? Without our health, what do we have? And for anyone that's thinking, oh gosh, this me first mentality doesn't sort of sit well, it doesn't have to be me first, it's just got to be me as well. Okay? So there's one for you. There's a nice little mantra. It doesn't have to be me first, it's just me as well. And that's what self-care is. Self-care is healthcare, right? It is nourishment for the head, the heart, and the body. And I think perhaps we're well versed with what it takes to nourish ourselves physically, but perhaps we need a broader conversation on how it is that we can take care of ourselves energetically, emotionally, and mentally. And that's what we'll be doing together today. I hope that sounds good. Okay. There's another concept I think that can be useful, and that is thinking of self-care as energy management. Okay, so just like a car needs petrol to go, we need energy to fuel us through our day. And as I've already said, when you're topped up, that's when you can respond creatively, compassionately, yeah, to whatever it is that occurs in our day. So you can think of self-care as a deposit in your energy bank. And again, I'm hoping with these different conceptualizations of self-care, it's not always a time-consuming, expensive product or a luxurious act. Please engage in these things. This is important, but it's more than that, right? Let's be honest, sometimes the true act of self-care is actually the last thing we feel like doing. Yeah, it doesn't always look glamorous. Sometimes it's really messy. Yeah, taking a look at our emotions can be really messy. It always helps us feel better. Right? So, in a nutshell, self-care is healthcare, or self-care is energy management, and really it's coming up with a definition that works for you. Yeah, it's thinking about what does self-care facilitate in your life, and I hope that that has you thinking, yeah, it's not just important for me to do it, I want to do it. It's okay for me to do it. Yeah? Okay. I think it also helps to kind of take a look at a distinction between self-care and the crutches that we habitually turn to. Not for a second, though, am I saying that I aspire to live a life devoid of chocolate, Netflix, social media, wine and cloth. It's really important, though, that we see a distinction, okay? And my definition here is self-care helps you cope in the moment, but it also makes tomorrow easier, whereas a crutch helps you cope in the moment, but they all incur an energetic tax. They tend to make tomorrow harder. So if we're habitually turning to these things to help us manage our day, they either give us the jitters, they increase our financial burden, maybe they contribute to mind fog, fatigue. But in a nutshell, what they do is they actually make it harder to get a good night's sleep. Okay, so we just need to be very careful with our relationship with these things. And what I'm hoping we'll be able to do together today is to actually brainstorm a whole bunch of alternatives. So instead of having caffeine after midday, well, there's this practice that we can do. Right? So if I haven't answered those questions, if you're thinking, I haven't got a direct swap for that, please make sure that you let me know and we can generate that together. But I just want to flag, yeah? These things are here to support us, but we just need a broader toolkit from which to draw. So self-care helps us cope in the moment, and it also makes tomorrow easier. I hope that sounds pretty good. We also, I think, need to take a quick look at the scope of self-care. And this is really important. While I am really passionate about empowering you with accessible practices and skills, not for a minute am I saying that we should be shouldering our burden alone. Okay? It's really important that we all know that people need people, and it's not about doing it all on your own. And this coming together today is such a beautiful opportunity for you to broaden that network of support. So be on the lookout for kindred spirits and know that yes, there are things that we can do that will help us keep putting one foot in front of the other, but it's not about doing it all on your own. Okay? Shall we take a quick little look at resilience as well? So this is what I'm hearing in my clinic. I should be coping better. I should be stronger. I should be more resilient. Other people have it a lot tougher, so I don't have a right to struggle. From my perspective, all of those phrases, they just keep us stuck. Yeah? And I think it's sort of linked with this idea that resilience is somehow, if you imagine what resilience, kind of the image, it's sort of like this super billowing superhero cape with someone standing firm and painful emotions or loss or anxiety, just pinging on this sort of shiny chest. That's not resilience. Yeah? Resilience doesn't make you immune from painful emotions or energetic bankruptcy, right? It doesn't. What resilience is just the ability to get back up again. Life will still knock us for 6, yeah? But it's just the ability to get back up. So please don't associate resilience with being unaffected by life. That literally just keeps us stuck, because what lies at the heart of resilience is actually our ability to give ourselves permission to have a normal human response to life. And resilience can actually look like lying on the floor in a child's place having a really big cry. Okay? So, if you find yourself saying those things to yourself, I should be stronger, or I should be coping better, I want you to reframe it. Come back to that phrase that I opened up with. Of course you feel as you do. Yeah? Please be tender with yourself. And there are things that you can do to support yourself in that moment, in addition to reaching out and drawing on the love and support of people around you. Okay? Let's get practical now. Are we ready for that? Yeah? Practical toolkit. What I want to do is sort of break it into 3 different threads. And I'm aware of time, so we'll keep it brief. There are 3 main threads to tough times. We have stress and overwhelm. We have grief and loss. And we have change and transition. And there are different skills that help us navigate each. So I just want to touch on each of those. I think probably it helps to sort of identify what are the skills. So we'll start with stress. What are the skills that help us navigate stress? First and foremost, it's actually the ability to notice. Yeah? Mindfulness is a really core coping skill. It's actually noticing whether it's tension or whether it's the presence of emotion or whether it's fatigue. Because until we've noticed, we can't do anything about it. All right? So number 1, what we're aiming to do is to develop our ability to notice, our mindfulness muscles. Secondly, we need to cultivate the ability to let go. And we've already experienced that today with that little bit of gentle exertion. The third thing that we need to do is learn how to regulate our nervous system. Right? This is where we self-soothe. And probably the breath is the easiest vehicle for that. Having said that, I'm curious, has anyone had this experience where if you're feeling anxious, or stressed or overwhelmed, and someone says to you, hey, take a deep breath, it can actually amplify it, can actually make it worse. Has anyone experienced that? Where just breathing on its own can actually make you feel a little bit more agitated? What I want to share with you is a beautiful secret that will help you cut through that. So instead of thinking about the breath, pair breath and movement together. Okay? So I want to show you, we'll do a couple, some of which you won't have space to do, but let me demonstrate. Some of which you can do them in the post office queue. Yeah, there's some. So the first one that I would suggest, now this one, I think we probably don't have space to do it, so I'll just show you. It's called the mountain breath. So I've already talked about making sure that we've got a swap for things like caffeine. This is your swap for caffeine after midday. Please save your morning coffee. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying let's just have 3 or 4. So, mountain breath. Ideally you would do this standing, but you can do it sat at a desk. It's the beginning of the sun salute. Start with the arms down by the sides. As you breathe in, reach your arms out and up. Hello, light. Look up. And as you exhale, lower the arms down by the sides. Okay? You do that 6 times. Breathing in and breathing out. Now, I know it just looks like I'm waving my arms around, but actually, by virtue of raising the arms out to the sides, you're opening the intercostal muscles between the ribs, which makes more space for the inhalation. And the amazing thing is, when you do this with the arms, it ignites the diaphragm to more completely empty the lungs, and it's hardwired. So without even thinking about it, you're not thinking about the breath at all. By virtue of that movement, you're actually opening up the body to receive a more complete breath. And the fact is, it is literally, from a physiological point of view, it's impossible to be stressed at the same time as breathing well. Because when you breathe naturally and expansively, it triggers parasympathetic functioning. Okay, we're in the rest and digest mode. Let's be honest, you still may be aware of things that are required of you, but you won't be in that stress response. Okay? So something simple like that does, I know it looks like I'm just standing up and waving my arms around, but it does have a powerful effect on your nervous system. Granted, we can't do that one in the middle of the session. So we need something a little bit more subtle. If you have your hands free, now this is the one that you could do in the post office queue, and this is the one that we can try together. Should we do it? So if you can free up your hands, rest your hands somewhere comfortable. As you breathe in, please do this in time with your breath, not mine. As you breathe in, open your hands fully. And as you exhale, make a gentle fist. Keep moving in time with your breath. Inhaling, open the hands. Exhaling, close the hands. Allow there to be a little pause at the end of the inhale and a little pause at the end of the exhale. So there are 4 phases of your breath. Breath in and a little pause, and the breath out and a little pause. Now, I don't know if you can see it, you can let that go now. Can you see this? When I do this with my hands, it's like the mountain breath. It's hardwired. When you open your hands, it actually opens up the ribcage. I have no idea how it works. And equally, when you do this, again, it ignites the diaphragm. So it helps us breathe better. And the very simple mantra is, when you breathe better, you feel better. Okay, so these are very simple ways that we can dial down the stress response and keep us anchored in compassion. Because interestingly, as soon as we're in a stress response, the prefrontal cortex goes offline, and it's really hard to empathise with other people. Okay, so we don't only need self-care for our health, we actually need it for the health of our relationships as well. This is a very simple thing that we can do. How did that feel? Was it pleasant? Mm-hmm. Yeah? So that one is particularly useful, that if you were to just breathe on its own in stillness, if that doesn't resonate, then just pair it with movement. Okay? Whether it's the mountain breath, if you've got space to do that, or my other favourite, and this one has a really stupid name, designed to hopefully make you have a little giggle, but also so you never forget it. It's half the battle is we forget these things. So the third breathing exercise is the chicken wing shoulder roll. Don't do it like this, because that's a bit floppy and you don't get so much out of it. You need a chicken wing. So as you breathe in, you scoop your elbows up. As you breathe out, you take your elbows back and down. So this is really powerful for releasing tension in the neck, shoulders, the chest, and it helps us breathe better. It's just like the mountain breath. Okay, and then let it go. One more for stress. And I imagine you're all really well versed with this, but there's an acupressure point in your forehead. We're going to channel Homer Simpson. If you were to get bad news and you were standing up, you'd be likely to go, or if you were sat at a table, you'd go, oh. Yeah? Because the body's hardwired to heal itself. So we can make use of that acupressure point either by just using the back of the hand, or I quite like to massage my goatee balls. Make a fist with both hands. Now this soft part here at the base of the thumb, imagine you've got two goatee horns here. And you press the base of your thumb into your forehead. And as you do that, can you feel how it relaxes your eyes? It smooths that space between your eyebrows. It softens the tongue in your mouth, relaxes the jaw. And it slows our rate of breathing down. So we are in the rest and digest mode, as opposed to fight and flight. And then let that go. And as you let it go, you might notice you actually have greater clarity of vision. It's a powerful little circuit breaker. So if you think about, we reboot our computers every so often, you can reboot yourself by either earthing your brow or massaging your goatee horns. Okay, you won't forget that one. Okay, so that covers some practices that we can use in the moment for stress. I'm all for micro moments because they're accessible and stress has a cumulative effect, doesn't it? So if we just think about having one stress-busting practice at the end of the day, well, it's likely that we're going to be Vesuvius by that point. So these practices are designed to just sort of give us an opportunity to vent throughout the day. However, I think we do need to have some longer practices, and I just want to make some suggestions here because I think what serves us really well is actually having a mind map of these nourishing practices, because I don't know about anyone else, but as soon as I find myself having more than 10 minutes, I'm like, what the hell did I used to do? What's available to me? But if you have it written down, it circumvents that flapping around, yeah? So some suggestions here, and I'd love to hear from you if you guys have got some suggestions as well. We can have a journaling practice. Being in nature is tremendously soothing. It doesn't require any energy. There's just that effortless receipt. Have a list of podcasts, TED Talks, audiobooks that you find nourishing. Legs Up the Wall. Is anyone not familiar with Legs Up the Wall? Give me a wave if you haven't tried Legs Up the Wall. Fantastic. Okay, so Legs Up the Wall is a restorative yoga pose. Shan't demonstrate it today. However, it does really help to know how to come into it. So if you imagine that there's a wall here, I would not sit on the floor and approach it like this. It's really hard to get your hips close enough. The wall is here. You take a seat with your hip flush to the wall, then lie onto your back and shoot your legs straight up because you want the whole length of your limb to be supported by the wall, not just the back of your heels. The reason why it's so powerful is that it redistributes the blood flow to the vital organs. Okay? Another reason why I love it, apart from its potency, is that you don't actually have to drop off. You don't have to fall asleep to get the benefit. So I don't know if anyone's had that experience of you tried to have a nap, either someone's interrupted you or sleep has been elusive and then you sort of wind up feeling more irritated by that practice, not sort of delivering. Legs up the wall, 5 minutes. Yeah, but please don't do legs up the wall and ruminate on what someone said to you yesterday. Or think about your to-do list for tomorrow. Actually give yourself permission to let the world wait. Yeah, and it's tremendously healing. If your mind is really busy, you can either anchor it on a mantra, something like, I soften into this moment, or I give myself permission to rest, I'm deserving of tenderness. Just keep those things on the loop. Or if you find that your mind is still getting drawn to unhelpful thoughts, then anchor it on something constructive, whether it's a breathing practice, maybe that could be a nice chance for candle breath. That's all it is, really simple. Or listen to something that guides you into relaxation. And on that note, is anyone unfamiliar with Yoga Nidra? Give me a wave if you haven't. Beautiful? Okay. So Yoga Nidra is essentially a guided relaxation. I find it super boring and it puts me to sleep every time. That's a winner, yeah? For anyone that's got a sleep deficit. Different things will resonate for different people. You will need different things in different moments. Write it down. Have a self-care toolkit that you can turn to in those moments of squeeze or in those moments where you actually have a second to replenish yourself and it will serve you well. Okay, let's have a quick look at grief. I think this is one that's really relevant right now. I think we tend to associate grief with bereavement, but there are so many other circumstances for which grief is a very valid, natural response, and it's very relevant right now. Some of those reasons are when our safety is threatened, now that includes our financial stability, when our identity or our self-expression is challenged, when our autonomy, including our capacity to work, is compromised. And we also grieve for lost imagined hopes and an imagined future. So you can see why that is so relevant right now. The skills that help us navigate grief are a little bit different to the skills that help us navigate stress. Really, it's largely around our emotions. It's the ability to feel our feelings. It's the ability to extend compassion towards ourselves. And it's also, obviously, it helps in being able to reach out and ask for support so that we can feel part of something bigger than ourselves. I just want to share with you a couple of practices that we can use that will help us move through our emotions. Let's start off with maybe the more charged emotions, like resentment or frustration or anger. I'm going to look a little silly with this one, but I'm good with that because it's a really powerful technique. Has anyone heard of the lion breath? Yeah? Lion breath is a really powerful way to release things that could be harmful if you put them into words. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a bit of cathartic swearing, as long as, it's appropriate. But lion breath is a fantastic alternative, okay? Let me show you it and then I'll talk you through it. So it looks and sounds like this. Yeah, it's a real cathartic roar. Yeah, is that a question?
It's good for parrot.
Yes. Yeah, anything that, if you're bringing the chin down, yeah, absolutely. That's right, I'm drawing on my yoga kit. Yeah. So really powerful for releasing the energetic charge of emotion. And this is the thing with emotions. They have an energetic charge. So if you think, if you watch something funny and you stifled a laugh, or if you saw something sad and you said, now's not the time, it's not like that energy just disappears. It gets held in the body. And this is why the work that you do is just so fundamental to our healing collectively. But the breath can be a very powerful way for dissipating that energetic charge, whether it's in the moment or afterwards. So the lion breath can be a really useful way to release things that may be hard to put into words or harmful if we say them out loud. So that's one way. Another way is using touch. Yeah? So it could be as simple as if you hold your own thumb. Now you're not just, as you do that, you're extending a sense of tenderness towards yourself. You're bearing witness to whatever it is that you're experiencing. You're giving yourself permission to feel as you do. Can you feel that's really soothing? Yeah? I do this when I'm watching telly. If anyone watches my little Instagram live on a Monday, every time I'm sort of doing something like this beforehand, because it's just calming. Yeah? The other one that I really love, if you want to try it, if you cup your chin in your hands, and as you do that, it's an invitation to come home to the body again. And it just reminds us, this loving gesture, it reminds us that we can be our own safe place. And that we are deserving of that same tenderness and kindness that we so generously extend to others. And let that go. That's a lovely practice. Yeah? Okay. So these simple things, they really can make a tangible difference. I'm conscious of time. I'm wondering if, before we finish, I know we haven't looked at change and transition, but essentially what helps us navigate that is connection with values. So I would just encourage you to think about what matters to you, but also using your body to come into that position of power. And this is what research shows us, that it's not something that just happens in our head, it's an embodied state. So this is where things like chicken wing shoulder roll can be really powerful, just kind of helping us feel grounded and standing in our own personal power. Do we have time for any questions? Or do we need to wrap up? Yes? Okay. Are there any questions, guys? been useful? Can you see yourself using these practical tools? Yeah? Yeah. Awesome. Pleased to hear it. Are we done? Any questions?
I have a question.
Great.
If you're talking about grief, I wasn't sure if I caught it. Did you say the emotions of grief can be similar to loss of self or financial stability?
Yes, all those circumstances that I talked about, you know, threatened financial stability, lost imagined hopes and futures, all of these things trigger a very natural grief response. Yeah. And I think that it helps us make sense of our feelings right now. Because there are so many circumstances that we've experienced in the last 2 years that have us feeling flawed. It's grief for very valid reasons. And the work of grief is to feel the feelings, right? And that looks messy, but we can be messy together. Okay. Unless there are other questions? Amazing. I'm going to be around for the rest of the day, so please come and seek me out. Come and have a chat with me. Yeah? Well done. Thanks, everyone.